Okay, so we've all been here, right? You've got this brand new, exciting goal. Maybe you're going to learn to code, or start a side hustle, or finally run that half marathon. And right away, you're faced with this choice. Do you tell everyone you know to get that support and hold yourself accountable? Or do you keep it quiet, move in silence, and wait until you've actually got something to show for it? It seems like a simple question, but honestly, the answer is way more complex than you think. And getting it wrong? Well, it can be the one thing that stands between success and, well, not success.
And this quote from a Reddit user just nails it. It perfectly captures that weird feeling so many of us have had. You share your big plan, you get the high fives, the "that's amazing" comments, and then poof, the motivation just kind of fizzles out. It's like talking about it gives you this strange, premature sense of accomplishment. And you know what? There's real science behind this. When you get all that social validation, your brain gets a little hit of dopamine. That's the reward chemical. It's the same good-feeling stuff you'd get from actually making progress. So your brain basically goes, awesome, we got the reward for this. And that powerful drive you had to do the hard work, it just gets a lot weaker. You've basically short-circuited your own reward system.
So this brings us to the big question, the whole reason we're doing this explainer. Does sharing your goals actually kill them? Is all that conventional wisdom about accountability partners and public declarations just wrong? Or is there something more going on here? Well, spoiler alert, there is so much more to the story.
So to figure this all out, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with this idea of a sharing paradox, then dive into the psychology of silence and why talking can actually be a trap. After that, we'll flip it and look at the very real power of accountability. The key, as you'll see, is in having a framework for smart sharing. We'll even see how this works in a professional setting, with public versus private goals, before wrapping it all up into a strategy you can actually use.
Okay, let's start with the argument that feels a little backwards, the case for keeping your mouth shut. Why on earth would keeping your ambitions to yourself actually help you achieve them? Well, it all boils down to this really fascinating psychological concept.
And that concept is called social reality. It's this mental state where just the act of announcing your intention gives you the feeling that you've already made progress. Think about it. Someone decides they want to become a novelist. They tell all their friends, they change their Instagram bio to aspiring writer, and they get this flood of likes and encouragement. In their mind, and in the minds of their friends, they are now an aspiring novelist. That identity is established. The danger is that this great feeling can replace the lonely, not-so-glamorous work of actually sitting down and writing page after page. The talk tricks your brain. It confuses saying you'll do the goal with doing the goal.
Now, what's really wild is that this isn't some new-agey pop psychology idea. This has been around for almost 100 years. It started way back in 1926 with Kurt Lewin, who's basically the father of social psychology. He figured out that having a goal creates this mental tension that you need to resolve with action, but talking about it could release that tension too early. Then, in 1933, his student Wera Mahler put a name to it, finding that public praise created this very social reality in our brains. The idea kept developing for decades, and then finally, in 2009, a psychologist named Peter Gallwitzer came along with a bunch of studies that gave us the cold, hard data to prove it.
And this chart shows exactly what he found. It's brilliant. In his studies, he had a group of law students write down their goal of becoming a lawyer. Half of them stood up and announced their commitment to the room. The other half, they kept quiet. Then everyone was given 45 minutes of real legal cases to work on. Stuff that would actually help them reach their goal. But they were told they could stop whenever they wanted. The results were just stark. The people who kept their goals secret worked on average for the full 45 minutes. But the ones who had announced their goal, they quit after just 33 minutes. That's a huge drop in effort. And here's the craziest part. Afterwards, the silent group felt like they still had a long way to go, but the announcers felt they were already much closer to their goal. They worked less, but felt more accomplished. That's social reality in a nutshell.
So, case closed, right? Just keep your goals secret, always, end of story. Well, not so fast, because there's this huge pile of conflicting evidence and a completely different side to this story. We've all been told that telling someone your goal is supposed to make you more likely to achieve it. So where does that idea come from?
This is the sharing paradox in action. On one side, like we just saw, you risk that premature dopamine hit. You can fall into the social reality trap, and you can even open yourself up to negativity from others. The friend who says, "Oh, are you sure you can do that?" But on the other side, sharing has some huge rewards. It creates real external accountability, the good kind of pressure. It opens the door to support and advice from people who've already been where you want to go, and it can create incredible teamwork. The thing is, Both of these sides are completely true.
And the case for sharing has some seriously powerful data backing it up. A study by Dr. Gail Matthews at Dominican University found that people who just wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them. That's already pretty good, but here's where it gets wild. The people who wrote down their goals and shared their progress with a friend every single week, they had a staggering 76% success rate. 76%! That number is way too big to ignore. It proves that a very specific kind of sharing, when you do it the right way, is an absolute game changer.
So how do we solve this puzzle? How can silence be good, but sharing also be good? The secret isn't in a simple yes or no answer. It's not if you should share. It's about understanding how, what, and with whom you should share. There's a science to it, a framework for what you could call smart sharing.
Okay, let's walk through this because every single step here is critical. First, share with a trusted friend whose opinion you actually respect. Research shows being watched by a stranger can feel judgmental and kill your motivation. Second, and this one is huge, share your process goals, not your identity goals. An identity goal is, I will become a data scientist. That's vulnerable to the social reality trap. A process goal is, I will study for 10 hours this week. It's about the work, it's concrete, it's accountable. Third, you've got to check in with frequent written updates. Remember, that's what got that 76% success rate. Fourth, you need to ask for the right kind of praise. We'll get to that in a second. And finally, number 5, you have to guide the feedback you get. Ask for encouragement at the very beginning when you're fragile. You can ask for the tough critical feedback later once you've got some momentum.
Now, that fourth point about praise is so important it needs its own slide. You want to ask for process praise, not person praise. It's the difference between hearing, wow, you worked really hard on that, versus, wow, you're so smart. Process praise focuses on your effort, your strategy, things you can control. This builds what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. It makes you resilient. Person praise, on the other hand, focuses on some fixed, innate ability. It sounds nice, but it's dangerous. Because if success comes from being smart, what happens when you fail? It means you must be dumb. It makes you want to quit instead of try harder.
So, this is all great for personal stuff, but how does this whole framework apply at work, where goals are often public by default? Well, the key is to understand that you have two different kinds of goals that serve two totally different purposes.
At work, think of it as having public goals and private goals. Public goals are all about alignment, hitting the team's sales target, launching a project on time. The audience for that is your whole team, and you're accountable to the company. These are totally fine to share widely because you're all working on it together, but then you should have your own private goals. These are for your personal development, learning a new skill, getting better at presentations, positioning yourself for a promotion. These are best shared privately with just your manager, who can be that perfect strategic accountability partner. By telling them you want to learn new software, they can give you the right process feedback and maybe even find some training budget for you. This structure gives you the best of both worlds.
Okay, we have covered a whole lot of ground here, from psychological research going back nearly a century to some really practical frameworks. So let's boil it all down into a clear, simple strategy.
So here's your playbook. First, understand that strategic silence is a powerful tool. It protects your motivation from that social reality trap, especially at the beginning of a big goal. But don't be a hermit. Sharing with the right person, a trusted friend or a good manager, is the key to unlocking powerful accountability. When you do share the process, not just the big identity. Talk about the 10 hours you'll put in this week, not the huge dream. And guide them to give you that good process praise that focuses on your hard work. And finally, at work, get intentional about separating your public team goals from your private growth goals.
I think this quote just captures the whole spirit of this perfectly. It's not about hiding forever. It's about focusing your precious energy on the work, not the talk. It's about doing the thing so that when the time is right, the results you've earned speak for themselves, way louder than any announcement ever could. And that just leaves us with one final question to think about. Based on everything we've just talked about, what's one important goal in your life right now that you might be better off pursuing in silence, protecting that initial spark of motivation to make absolutely sure you see it through to the end? The choice, of course, is yours.